All right, so we're picking up with the laws of Borer, and we should be able to complete them today. And the laws of Borer had to do with separating various different items from one another. And again, it's specifically talking about cases where you have one item that's what we call the ochel, the food, the desirable pieces, and the psolet, which is what we call the undesirable, the things we don't want. So one of the classic cases where this would happen is if hey waiter, there's a fly in my soup, right? If you find an insect or some undesirable piece of something floating in your drink, most of us would just throw the drink out, but you don't have to. So it says as follows: if a fly or a mosquito falls into a cup that has a liquid, a drink, you could take it out of the liquid, because there's a general rule that most people apply, which we'll get to in a second, which is that when it comes to a liquid, the law of Borer doesn't apply. According to some opinions, the law of Borer, of separating the good from the bad, only applies in solids, because you could, there are two different types, but when it's a liquid, it's kind of all mixed in together, and therefore there's no concept of Borer. It doesn't apply, and therefore you would just be able to, take it out, no problem, pull the fly out of the soup, the liquid, or whatever it may be, and that would be according to that opinion. However, there's another opinion which is stricter, which says that no, there is borer, and therefore you can't take it out. So two different opinions. If we want to be according to all opinions, the way to deal with it is relatively simple, and that is to take some kind of spoon or cup or something like that and take out a little of the liquid with the fly that you're taking out. So in other words, you're not taking out the bad from the good. You're taking out a little bit of good and the bad, so it's not really borer. And this is another reason why it wouldn't be such a problem to take it out. So therefore, you could pour some out from the cup. As you're pouring some out of the cup, the fly comes out, so that comes out. Again, all sorts of ways that you can handle it. But the general principle that we've been saying is that according to some opinions and reliable opinions, the liquid doesn't have the rule of borer, so it's a lot less of a problem. So you could take it out. But if you wanted to be according to all opinions, so just take out a little bit of the liquid with the solid that you're taking out with the fly, and it won't be a problem. Okay. Mutar lo hotzi krum shehitave al hachalav shehurtach me'erev Shabbat k'dei lishtot hachalav miyad ve'en bazeh mishum en b'sor b'toch ochel. He says there could be a situation where there's a layer of I guess here he's talking about milk, right? So there's a layer of like residue or fat or something that's on top of the milk. He says you could scoop that part out and take it off. It's not a problem. He says so too, a soup, right? On a soup, you may find that there's like a layer of stuff that gathered on the top of the thing, and you want to take that out. You can do that as well. He says, okay. Says the next case is a very common case. He says a teapot that has on the top of the teapot, very often you'll see there's like a netting on the mouth of the teapot. And the purpose of the netting is for what? That within the teapot, what do you have? You put the tea leaves and so on. And then when you're pouring out, you get just the tea, not just the liquid, and not the tea leaves. You don't want the tea leaves in. So that sounds like it's borer, right? Sounds like it's a problem. He says, no problem. You're allowed to do this. It's not an issue of borer. Again, all going into this idea of, well, there's a few reasons why it would be allowed. One is liquids, we're really generally not applying it. But two, what are we doing? We're really taking out the part that we want. So therefore, it's a lot less of an issue. Okay, next case. He says, what about a salt shaker? A a salt shaker, right? What very often, I don't know why they do this, I think it's because it absorbs the moisture, right? But very often in the salt shaker, people put in grains of rice. I don't know if you ever noticed this, right? So the grains of rice, it seems like they put that in order to prevent the salt from getting wet. And when it gets wet, then it clumps up and then it won't come out of the shaker. So they put rice in the salt shaker. So now when I'm pouring out of the salt shaker, the rice generally will not come out. Why? Because the rice is bigger than the salt. And so maybe I'm doing borer, right? Because I have the salt is what I want. The rice is not what I want. So maybe it's a problem. So he says, not a problem. He says, there's not, for a few reasons. One is, again, we're taking out the part that we want, right? So we're taking out the rice, we're taking out the salt, not the rice. So that makes it less of a problem. But also, this is considered, you're not trying to separate in any way. If it so happens, it so happens. What you're trying to do is just simply put salt on what you have. So therefore, they don't consider it that. Another case, which is a very, very, very common case, is a water filter, right? And so there's various different types of water filters, right? So the most obvious is the Brita, right? And everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say the Brita, right? It's you pour it into the water into a pitcher, and then there's this like pretty heavy piece that's on top. And as you're pouring it out, the water goes through there, and somehow the water gets cleaned, filtered, purified by going through there. And there's lots of versions of this, including many of us have this in our kitchen sinks, in our refrigerators, and so on and so forth. The refrigerator is a problem because it's electric, so you probably can't use that one. But the non-electric ones, right, like in my water cooler or in my sink or something like that, am I allowed to use that? And the answer that we'll give in general is yes, you can use that. And the reason you could use that is because the water is fine to drink as is. You know, this is like an extra cleaning. It's not you're not really taking out stuff, you know. And I know that when you open up the Brita, you see stuff, but that's only after a lot of time, right? If you open a new pack of Brita, right, and you poured a pitcher full of water into the pitcher, and then you poured it out, and then you took out the filter and looked what was there, you know, it looks new. You wouldn't be able to see much because it's really filtering out such a small amount and such an insignificant amount that it's really the over time that matters, and therefore we would be allowed to do this. This actually came up in something that happened a number of years ago. You may remember this. But you know that we can't eat bugs, right? We're not allowed to eat bugs. And a number of years ago, there was Israel used to, well, they still have it, but not from there. Gush Katif, which was, kind of in the Gaza Strip, used to sell what they call aleh katif. They still sell them, I think, which was fruits that were, fruits and vegetables grown hydroponically, and we talked about this, right? What hydroponics is, where you don't grow it in the ground, you grow it in some other medium, a pot or something like that. And basically, they said there's no bugs because it doesn't grow in the ground. And people here were noticing, hey, we're finding some bugs on our salads, on our lettuce. And they went to Israel, and Israel said, look, it can't be from us. It must be from you. Check your water. And I was like, what do you mean, your water? The water is the water. It's fine. But that's what they said, check the water. It turns out that they checked New York City water. And in fact, in New York City water, there's a certain tolerable amount of organisms that could be in the water. And one of them is called a copepod, COPEPOD. And it's a really small little bug that lives in New York City water. And it's a whole debate whether or not you could see it with your eye or not, and whether or not, and if you can't, so it doesn't matter. But basically, they were finding that this was a thing, and a lot of people in the religious world went crazy, right? What are we going to do if you can't drink New York City water? If you can't wash our food with New York City water, it would be a major concern. So people started getting a lot more careful about filtering. And you may have noticed in lots of stores that kosher food stores, that there was for a while, you don't see it so much anymore, but there used to be signs on the window, our water is filtered. I don't know if anyone's seen that or not, but that was the reason why. Of course, this created a problem, right? Because they said, well, if you have to filter the water during the week to keep it kosher, great. But then what are you going to do about Shabbat, right? You're not going to be able to drink the water. So you're going to have to tell everybody that any water they want to use, they have to do before Shabbat, or take off the filters, or all sorts of other stuff that went into it. So it did create a little bit of an issue. But in the end of the day, for practical halacha, what we hold is that it's not a problem, and you can filter your water, and even the little guys in the water. I have my doubts about it. I've checked lots of cups of water and yet to see one of these items. So the idea that there's lots of them all around is, or that they're visible is a little bit challenging. I think that most of them are if not all of them, are not visible. Anyway, all of that goes back to this whole idea of borer on a liquid. Let me keep going. Mutar l'shfoch shi'arei ma'achal hamuravim barotev l'toch kli menukav hamunach b'kior kedei lemnoa pizur hapsolet b'kior ve'en b'kach isur shel borer. So there's another example, right? He says, let's say now you finished eating, right? And you want to pour things into your sink, right? And into your sink, maybe there's like a strainer on the mouth of the I don't know what you call that, the hole where the water goes down in the sink, because you don't want to send all the solids down, because then it'll all clog up and what have you. Also not a problem, because there's a few different ways of looking at it, but basically you kind of want the water to go one place and the other part to go another place, and then you're going to take it and deal with it. So it's really not a problem. And again, as we said, in general, we say that liquids do not create a problem of borer, so therefore not a problem. So if you have a strainer in your sink that's preventing things from going down the drain, it's okay. You're allowed to use that. Okay. All that is borer on food. Now we're going to talk about borer on other items if it applies. And that's what we're going to talk about. But I just want to take a second. Anyone have any questions on borer? I probably bored you to death on the borer to this point, because it's a little tedious after a while. But if anyone has any questions on borer on the food, ask it now. Otherwise, we're going to move forward.
Okay, I have one question. Is it considered?
I lost the sound, Dave. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Is it borer if you separate it on your plate? Let's say you have rice with mushrooms. You don't like mushrooms, so you want to put them to the side on your plate.
So we would say, even in that situation, take the rice. You want the rice, you don't want the mushrooms. Right. Take the rice and push it. Try not to. It would apply there. You don't want to take the mushrooms and put them on the side. You want to take the part that you have and do it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I learned from a very young age how to eat around things. So it's a good skill to have for this. So my mother will tell you I didn't eat anything green for a long time, and a mushroom was even further. Okay. Kishem sheyesh din isur brera b'shnei ochalim, ken yesh isur brera b'kelim or begadim or sfarim hamuravim ze bazeh. So now this, bear with me as I go through this, right? Just like we said, there's borer for two types of foods, the one you want and the one you don't want. So the Chachamim extended the concept of borer to utensils, to clothing, to books, mixed in one another. He says, therefore, kli or beged or sefer mechavero. So if you want to separate a utensil, like a fork or a knife, or clothing, or a book, he should take the one that he wants. He should take it, the one that he wants, and use it right away, right? So if I go to my bookshelf, right, I don't take out the books I don't want. What do? I take the book that I do want, and I use it, right? Otherwise, it's considered borer, right? This is an area of halacha that comes into play in a lot of different cases, right? So, like I wouldn't go through my drawers and start, arranging my socks that I want to throw away or something like that. You wouldn't do that, So when you go to your clothing, you take out the clothing that you want and not the clothing that you don't want. Which, anyway, on Shabbat, what would you be doing, right? Other than throwing stuff out or giving stuff away. But even giving stuff away, in theory, assuming you could get around the, am I giving it away tomorrow, and then am I preparing for tomorrow on Shabbat? But if you want to give it away, then you have a purpose for it. You have a reason why you want it. So it's kind of, it sounds terrible, but then once you play it out, it's not as terrible as it is, as it sounds at first thought. Mutar levror sakinim kapot umazlegot umurabim ze bazeh lachar sudat Shabbat. This is the classic case that could potentially drive people crazy. Is you just washed your plates and knives and spoons and everything like that after lunch, right? And now you want to put them away in the drawer, right? And if your drawer is like my drawer, you don't just throw the silverware into the drawer, right? What do? You have a slot for forks, a slot for knives, a slot for spoons. So maybe you can't do that. Maybe you can't separate. So he says you're allowed to separate forks, knives, and spoons and put them each in its proper place, even if they're not in the same drawer or something like that, in order to use them for future meals. He says, and so too, in the shul, right? What happens in the shul? People leave sidurim, chumashim, talitot. They mix them all together, or they put them in a pile. And now you want to take one and put it here and one and put it there. That's not a problem. In all these situations, there's not really a bad, right? You want all of them. You want all of them in their particular place, and you're just organizing them, so it's not a problem. It would be a bigger problem if we were throwing out certain things. That would make a bigger issue. Mutar b'Shabbat לחפש ולהוציא מהארון את הנביא שצריכים לקרוא בו, אפילו שלא מכיר את מקומו המדויק בין הספרים, ואפילו כשצריך לשם כך להוציא את יתר הספרים עד שימצא את הנביא הדרוש, ואין בזה איסור ברירה. He says sometimes, right, what happens, there's a book in a particular box, right? And you wanna find that book, right? But you can't find it without going through and pulling things out. He says not a problem, right? That's all part of finding what you want. No issue. So you don't have to worry about unpacking a box that has a bunch of things in it, and you say, I don't want all the things that I'm unpacking. I want the thing that's somewhere in the middle. I have to find it. It's not a problem. So that's not a big deal. And he says the same thing applies to clothing, right? Mutar lasir begadim ha'elyonim ala kolev, שאף על פי שאינו צריך להם, אלא כוונתו להוציא את הבגד הפנימי שנמצא תחתיהם, ואין בזה משום בורר. He says, so therefore, if I'm going through my drawer, right, and I want to wear the blue t-shirt, right, and the blue t-shirt is under the red, the yellow, the green, right, so it's not a problem to take out the red, the yellow, the green in order to get to the blue. That's not considered borer. Okay. Mutar legabai bet haKnesset livror et hakartisim shel hashemot ha'olim laTorah ve'en bazeh mishum borer. So another case which he's talking about is in a shul. A lot of times they have cards in order to record who got the aliyah, right? And you have to sift through. Joe Romano went up. Oh, let's go through the box. Oh, let's take out, whatever the names before are, right? We have to take them out. Not a problem to sift through that. Not a big deal at all. You're picking out the card that you want. Okay. Next, he goes, I don't know why he leaves these two cases till the end, but I'll say them here. All right, so there's two more food cases, and with this we conclude the law of borer. One, right, let's say you have packages of matzah, right, and the matzah has pieces that are good and pieces that are whole and pieces that are broken, right? So you want to have, you don't want the broken pieces, right? You're a little OCD. You only want the nice pieces, right? So what do? You want to take out you want to take out. So obviously, As we've said, you could always take out the good pieces, and then that's no problem because you're taking good. He says, but even he says, but if what you should not do is you should not take out the bad pieces in order to throw them away, because those are undesirable. So if you're taking the matzah out of the box, you want to make sure you take out the whole matzah and not the broken matzah, unless you don't care about the broken matzah. Last case, which is very, very common, which we could have talked about before, which is I made tea, right? I have a tea bag in my tea, right? I don't want the tea bag, right? What do I want? I want the tea, right? So I'm taking out the tea bag, and what am I going to do to the tea bag? I'm just going to throw it away. It's not a problem. It's not considered borer. This is this is the way it's used. This is what it's for. And as we said about borer and liquids, not really applicable. So we're going to stop here today with the laws of borer. And tomorrow we're going to talk about a different concept, which is the concept of squeezing. And we're going to talk about squeezing lemon, squeezing lemon, squeezing juices. This is a whole nother area. It's not borer. It's a different type of concept. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Okay? Stop here.
Hazak Baruch. Have a great day, everybody.
IG.